Nancy, are you having an affair? There's a strange man sleeping in Mike's room. Something's not right here. Wait, how did you get in? Mother, that's not important right now. This isn't our room anymore. My name is Nancy. I'm 32 years old and work as a nurse. My husband Mike and I don't have any children yet, and we both juggle our busy jobs while sharing household chores. Even though we've been married for 3 years, I still feel like we're newlyweds. I'm truly grateful to be married to such a wonderful person. However, our peaceful life recently got disrupted by an unexpected guest. My mother-in-law. A few months ago, we moved to a new apartment due to Mike's job, which happens to be near his parents' home. After my father-in-law passed away 2 years ago, I felt my mother-in-law was probably feeling lonely living on her own. So when she started visiting us frequently, I thought it was something we couldn't avoid. But as her visits became more frequent, her behavior grew increasingly audacious. She began criticizing me openly. Nancy, can't you serve tea a bit faster? You're such an inconsiderate daughter-in-law. I really wonder why Mike married you. Maybe I should move in and teach you a thing or two. Just the thought of living with my mother-in-law was overwhelming. I couldn't stand it anymore and confided in Mike. He was surprised by how often she visited and scolded her on my behalf. Mom, I understand you're lonely, but you shouldn't take it out on Nancy. I was just trying to give her some advice. She doesn't need it. Above all, I don't want you to bother Nancy. My husband's stern words seemed to upset my mother-in-law, but I hoped it would make her reflect on her behavior. For a while, her visits stopped, but about a month later she started coming by again, always at the worst possible times. One morning, just before 9 a.m., loud knocking echoed from the front door, reaching all the way to our bedroom. I had just returned from a night shift and was eager to get some sleep. As I was about to head to bed, I heard a persistent knocking at the door. Peeking through the peephole, I saw my mother-in-law's face. Nancy, I know you're in there. Open up. Worried something might have happened, I quickly opened the door. She immediately complained about me being slow. Is there something you needed? I asked, trying to keep my patience. Do I need a reason to visit my son's place? She retorted. Well, I just got back from a night shift and need to rest before going out again this evening, I explained. She dismissed my concerns. What's a night shift? Just out having fun all night. That's not true, I replied. I work as a nurse at the hospital. Don't lie, she snapped. How could you let my son work alone while you're doing such a job? You're the worst. I'm working hard too, I said, struggling to stay calm. I really need to sleep now or it'll affect my job. That doesn't matter. I need to see if you're taking care of the house properly, she insisted as she pushed her way inside. She marched into the living room, sat down on the sofa, and demanded tea and snacks. Reluctantly, I prepared them for her, but she stayed for quite some time. She even had me prepare lunch for her, staying until my husband came home in the evening. I didn't get any sleep and had to go to work right afterward. She only left because my husband came home as scheduled. I worried that if he had been late, she might have stayed longer, possibly even preventing me from making my night shift. The thought of it made me shudder. Despite my husband's attempts to address the issue, my mother-in-law's visits continued. She would show up every few days, always targeting my night shift days, which left me suffering from chronic sleep deprivation and deteriorating health. I felt guilty asking my husband to come home early, but we were both puzzled by her behavior. We decided to confront her directly. On one of my night shift days, my husband took the day off to wait for her at home. As expected, she arrived and began banging loudly on the door. Nancy, open up. Are you out wasting your time again? You're such a careless wife. My husband, exasperated by her loud knocking and shouting, finally opened the door. Why did it take so long? Were you sleeping? Mike, why are you home at this time? Aren't you supposed to be at work? I took the day off today, Mother, he said. Have you been bothering Nancy like this every time she works a night shift? I only came because I believe Nancy is living so carelessly. I thought I should teach her a lesson, my mother-in-law said. How many times have we told you that Nancy works night shifts? She's probably lying. She's definitely out messing around. Enough. Nancy is working diligently. Do you want to confirm with the hospital? No, that won't be necessary. Then stop bothering Nancy early in the morning. Do you want to continue this and risk breaking ties with us? Why are you saying such cruel things? Because you're causing us distress. To be clear, if you come here again, we will cut all ties with you. Think about it. My husband's stern warning seemed to have hit her hard. She looked pale during the conversation. Indeed, after that, she never visited on my night shift days again. Finally, I could sleep peacefully, my health improved, and I was able to focus better on work. However, my mother-in-law, who should have been chastised by my husband, caused another problem about a month later. After returning from my night shift and falling into a deep sleep, I was abruptly woken by loud banging on the front door. Groggily, I got up to check through the peephole, and as expected, it was my mother-in-law. "Nancy, are you sleeping? What were you doing all night? Were you at a nightclub? Oh, you're not cheating, are you?" At first, I considered ignoring the noise, but when I heard her shouting loudly, I knew I had to address the situation. I immediately opened the door. "Mother, please don't make assumptions without knowing the whole truth." "Oh, so you're here after all," she said, her tone smirking. "You must have panicked and opened the door because you knew I was right, didn't you? Do you think what you're doing is acceptable?" I replied, "Have you forgotten that Mike said if this happened again, we would cut ties with you?" At my words, my mother-in-law just smirked. "There's no way Mike would do that. You probably forced him to say that." Amidst the argument, I noticed the large bag she was carrying. "What's in that bag?" "Well, since Mike is on a business trip for the next 2 days, I came to stay over to make sure you don't cause any trouble." "What? You want me to make you some tea?" I was stunned by her audacity. Taking advantage of my husband's absence, she had decided to drop by and announce. I was at a loss for words. The next day, I was off from work, but the following day I had another night shift. Just because my mother-in-law had arrived didn't mean I could skip work, but taking a day off was a different matter. I didn't want her snooping around our house, so I had no choice but to stay home. It was infuriating to think that my precious day off was being ruined by her presence. She made me work, demanding that I clean and cook. I had hoped to enjoy a brief respite from household chores while my husband was away, but instead, I found myself completely exhausted. She kept nitpicking at everything, saying things like, "You're too slow," and "Move more efficiently. It's clear you're lazy." "Since Mike isn't coming home today, I'll be strict with you," she declared, clearly relishing her role as my supervisor. I was already exhausted from work, so naturally, my pace at housework was slower. Despite my attempts to explain, she refused to understand and even doubted that I worked as a nurse. Seizing a moment when she was distracted, I messaged Mike about the situation. His reply was genuinely apologetic. "I'm so sorry. When I get back, I won't forgive my mother for what she's done." His message gave me some hope amidst the frustration. It was challenging dealing with her presence, but the thought of Mike returning kept me going. Perhaps sensing the growing tension, my mother-in-law left before Mike got back. When Mike returned from his trip, he immediately apologized. "I didn't realize my mother could cause so much trouble. It must have been stressful for you, Nancy. I'm truly sorry and I won't forgive her for this." Even though it wasn't his fault, he kept apologizing. He then suggested, "Should we consider moving?" "But we bought this place," I responded. "Are we selling it?" "No," he said. "I'm thinking of renting it out. That way, we can earn rental income and keep a distance from my mother." "I see. Okay," I replied. I agree with my husband's plan. As luck would have it, one of his coworkers was looking for a place to live, so we decided to rent out our flat to him. Since we were familiar with him, we negotiated a slightly reduced rent and agreed to leave the existing keys without changing them. We were relieved to find a tenant so quickly. My husband and I moved to a new flat and started our life there. Days went by peacefully without any visits from my mother-in-law. We had expected that she might visit our old place, find someone else living there, and then contact my husband. Surprisingly, that never happened. Perhaps it was because, after returning from his business trip, my husband had firmly told her over the phone that we wanted to cut ties. Still, we knew it was only a matter of time before she would reach out again. Moving proactively had been the right decision, and life settled into a comfortable routine. Then, one day, the inevitable call came. "Hello, Nancy, are you having an affair?" my mother-in-law shouted, clearly agitated. "There's a strange man sleeping in Mike's room. Something's not right." "Mike's room? Where are you right now?" "In your flat, of course." "Wait, how did you get in?" "Don't change the subject. That's not the point right now." "It's not our flat anymore," I said firmly. "That can't be true. I used my spare key." "A spare key? Why do you have that?" Before I could ask further, I heard the sound of police sirens in the background. I heard her exclaim, "Oh no, what's happening?" followed by the sounds of commotion and voices, likely from police officers. It seemed the police had arrived and detained her. A different voice then came on the line, sounding like a police officer. "Hello, I apologize for the disturbance. Can you explain your relationship to this individual?" "She's my mother-in-law," I replied. After answering a series of questions, the call ended. My husband and I decided to head to the police station. When we arrived, we saw my visibly exhausted mother-in-law, who appeared to have been thoroughly questioned. The police briefed us on what had transpired. As usual, my mother-in-law had been knocking incessantly on the flat's door, shouting various unfounded accusations about me. The unusual part was that no one responded from inside. Frustrated, she used her spare key to enter through the bedroom. Hearing snoring, she assumed it was me napping and stormed in, demanding to know why I was sleeping in the middle of the day and not at work. However, when she yanked off the covers, she found a stranger instead of me. Shocked, she screamed, and the man woke up in alarm. Concluding that the man must be my lover, she accused him loudly. "What are you doing in Mike's house? You must be Nancy's secret lover. How dare you sleep soundly in someone else's home?" The man, a colleague of my husband, sensed the danger upon seeing my mother-in-law's rage. She declared, "I'm going to call that woman right now. Don't move from here," before leaving the room to contact me. In the meantime, the colleague, the legal resident of the room, called the police to report an intruder. It was terrifying for anyone to be suddenly awakened by loud shouting and have their bedding pulled off, only to be yelled at by an unfamiliar, angry woman. The police arrived and detained my mother-in-law. My husband immediately apologized to the colleague who had known about our issues with my mother-in-law and seemed to recall the connection when she was arrested. The suddenness of the intrusion had clearly overwhelmed and confused him. Neither my husband nor I knew she had made an unauthorized copy of the key, and we hadn't informed the colleague. My husband was furious, as this incident had tarnished his impression with the colleague. He promised to cover the costs of changing the locks and offered compensation for the distress caused. He also decided to bill my mother-in-law for all the expenses. Although she was reluctant, she agreed to the terms to avoid further trouble with the authorities. She paid everything from the inheritance left by her late husband and ultimately severed ties with my husband. There's perhaps no more fitting end to a mother-in-law's torment of her daughter-in-law than this. From then on, my husband and I finally reclaimed our peaceful daily lives. The reduced stress may have contributed to my becoming pregnant, and I safely gave birth. Now, as a family of 3, we spend our days happily together.